And we're live. Good evening. This is Boston University Financial Assistance, and this is Talking Real Money. We're here to give you an overview of financial assistance process, some tips, and your questions. My name is David Janey, and I'm here with Rebecca Castley. And hopefully by the time we're done with the presentation, you'll have questions queued up for us. I see some of them coming in now, but rest assured, we don't want you to stress out about taking notes through the presentation. Shortly after, within a week or so after the presentation, you'll get an email that will give you a link to the video of the presentation, so you can have it for a reference if you want to rewind and look at it again. If there's something you missed, you're all set. So again, don't stress out too much about taking notes as we get into some of the detail. You may feel that there's a bit that you already know about financial assistance, and that's great. But you should know that if what you know is from another college or university, things sometimes vary a little bit from school to school. And if what you know is from a prior year, things vary some from year to year. So be attuned to that. And again, we're happy you're with us.
And we're competing with a Red Sox.
Oh, we're competing with the Red Sox game for those baseball fans over here. We have sports fan, non-sports fan here. So,
but we're better than, right?
Well, apparently we are.
Than a Red Sox home run.
Yes, you're spending much better time with us than with a sports activity. Okay. So the admissions and financial aid applying, we're going to hit this theme a number of times tonight. So don't wait to apply for admissions and get an admissions decision before you apply for financial assistance. If you do, I can guarantee you'll be too late and funding will have been exhausted at that point. Also, don't wait because the forms you need to complete the profile and the FAFSA, the CSS profile and FAFSA are available now. And the sooner you get going, the sooner you can be assured that you've got yourself well positioned to do the best you can as far as financial aid is concerned. And last point, again, another point that we'll hit many times is that unfortunately we're not able to be flexible with our deadlines. So pay careful attention to the deadlines. We'll get more specific about what those are as we move through the presentation, but definitely tune into deadlines. A little bit of a backup on choosing the right college. You're deep into this now, I'm sure. For students, there are 3 points out there. There are the academic aspect, the social aspect, and the financial aspect of choosing the college that's right for you. The top two are of particular focus for students, and the latter, or all three, really come into play when students and parents or others that may be helping with college expenses sit down and focus on those items there. There's more to consider. There are more factors to consider, more people to consider. There's inevitably a lot of discussion, and sometimes there's compromise. So if you're bearing those factors in the back of your mind as you're looking for the school that is the best fit, that's, I think, going to put you on the best track. And particularly keeping the financial fit aspect in focus for you. Financial feasibility. We spend a lot of time helping families get a handle on what's financially feasible for them and for their family, and looking at the viability of going to school and the value of what makes a Boston University education worthwhile. We know that BU is a large purchase. We also know that it is a great investment. So one of the measures of a great investment is student loan default rates. You can see on the screen there that the national default rate is almost 11%. The rate at Boston University is significantly less, 1.2%, which tells you that the question you have about if I come to BU and I have to take loans to come, will I be able to repay them when I graduate? It weighs heavily on a lot of students and parents' minds. These numbers suggest that the answer is yes, you will be able to. The fact that the default rate is that low suggest that students who come and borrow are able to repay their loans, and that's good news. Okay. How much will it cost? Knowing how much will it cost is kind of easy. It's right on our website. So that's not difficult. The thing we want to focus on and help you focus on is that until you know how much you're going to receive in financial aid, you can't really know how much Boston University is going to cost you and your family. And for that reason, we encourage you to apply for admissions and apply for financial assistance, and then make an assessment as to what cost is, because cost to you is really the important thing to focus on, not just the sticker price. Numbers, more numbers. I said there is financial aid available. Again, we don't have funds to offer aid packages to every eligible student, but clearly 240 million plus for undergraduates is a substantial sum, and funding is available. But 88% of the freshmen who apply for aid and enroll receive aid, and the aid packages are generous. About 92% of aid of need is met on average. So that all looks very good. And can be a little bit dizzying. So we're going to take a break at this point. We have a video of a student who wants to tell her story, and we're going to play that for you now, and then we'll come back and talk more about the application process itself. So, watch this video to the audience.
When I was looking for a college to attend for undergraduate, I knew that I wanted a school that could both provide me with academic opportunities as well as opportunities to learn through work. BU really stuck out to me because the human physiology program here at Sargent not only prepares me for the science basis of what I want to go into, but I learn a lot more about my field and how to apply my work later on. And there's also a lot of internship and work opportunities in research and clinical work here. So one of the activities that I'm heavily involved in is Global Medical Brigades, a large nonprofit organization with many chapters at different schools. Here at BU, we specifically work in Honduras, and we'll go down and help in specific villages, and then those villages will also receive brigades from the other parts of the organization, and the eventual goal is that they'll become self-sustainable. What I really love about Global Medical Brigades is how much you can learn while giving back. I've definitely realized more and more with my studies that I won't be able to be successful in my career as a healthcare professional if I don't have underlying motives to improve healthcare at large. Receiving a scholarship from BU for my undergraduate studies was definitely a main factor in allowing me to come here. I think with financial insecurity that comes with college sometimes, it inhibits people from being able to do as much as they want to do. So having financial security from BU has really allowed me to not only remain engaged in my studies here, but also look towards the future and what else I want to continue studying.
But it's in the white space, you can't see it.
Okay. So thank you, Lara, and I hope you enjoyed it. I love watching her video. I think I watched it several times and wish I could go back and do it all over. But thank you for joining us again. My name's Rebecca, and we're super excited to have you here. I love talking about financial aid, and so having a captive audience, and I'm just imagining you all riveted, and I know David said you didn't need to take notes, but I'm imagining that everybody is taking notes and sharing in our love of financial assistance. So David talked some great figures in $240 million. And I kind of put that in perspective because there's, I don't know which part of the country you're in, but there's several lottery drawings that are coming up, and they're really Mega Millions and Powerball and all these, and they're they're over hundreds of millions. But when I think about how much financial aid dollars that we give out to undergraduate students, it's really amazing. So the only way for you to get your portion of the $240 million is to apply. So how do we do that? Here at Boston University, we do require 2 financial aid applications. So you all might be remembering the College Board. They're your friends that administer the SAT program. So they put out an application called the CSS profile. And then there is a form called the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, that's put out by the Department of Education. So why are there 2 applications, you might ask, right?
Excellent.
Well, David, it takes an act of Congress to change a question on the FAFSA. So some schools and colleges, like Boston University, with a lot of our own financial aid dollars to give out, came together and said, we wish that we could offer additional questions or change with the times or delve a little bit more deeply and find out what's impacting this family's ability to finance college. So that's how the CSS profile came out. It was developed by colleges, usually typically schools that are private universities, more heavily on the East Coast, the Northeast, that have their own financial aid dollars to give out. One of the main differences is that the FAFSA, as the name indicates, is free to file. And the CSS profile, there is an ability to qualify for a fee waiver if you meet certain income requirements. And also if you qualify for the fee waiver to take the SATs, you'll definitely qualify for. But for other families, there is a fee. It's $25 to register and send the CSS profile to one school, and then $16 for each additional school. The FAFSA also has a limitation that you can send it to up to 10 schools initially. So the FAFSA application, it asks for information about your family, and I'll go a little bit more deeply into what both applications ask for, but you'll see that the FAFSA application wants you to report the information about the student that's applying to college, and then their parents. So it's asking about the information of your biological or adoptive parents. So if your parents are not married, not living together, or if you come from a single parent household, you just put that one parent on the FAFSA application. Whereas another big difference between the FAFSA and the CSS profile is that the CSS profile requires information from the student, that household that the parent lives in, and then there is another household that from that household as well. So that's another difference. So the CSS profile, when you're filling it out, the student will enter some questions at the beginning. It will ask who is that parent, the student's biological or adoptive parent, and then if the parents are not married or living together, you'll get some additional questions, and that's where the student will provide an email address of potentially another parent, and then that parent will get an email directing them to file another profile application, because the CSS profile wants to bring everybody to the party, and we just want information about both biological or adoptive parents if the student is able. If the student doesn't have contact or there's no way to collect that information, we have a waiver process. So there's actually a form on our website where you can request to get that parent's information waived. But that's a big difference, is on the FAFSA, it's just that one parent's information. So to apply for financial aid, it's basically 5 pieces of information. And a few years ago, actually, it was made simpler by the federal government that the information that you'll provide on the financial aid applications is based on what we refer to as prior year income. So if you're a senior this year, you're going to be filing the 2019-20 aid applications, and the income information that you'll use is from 2017, so 2017. So that tax return that hopefully you filed back in April, or even if you had an extension, I believe the latest date was yesterday, October 15th. So that form that you've already filed is what you're going to be reporting on the 19-20 aid applications. So the first thing to do is for the federal aid applications, both the student and the parent needs to get a federal student aid ID. And so this will be sort of like your online signature. So when you're filing the FAFSA, you'll need to sign it with your FSA ID, and then that becomes your federal signature for any loans that you take out, any subsequent FAFSAs that you do in future years. But it's important that the student and the parent gets a federal student aid ID, you can actually go ahead and get that, this evening or tonight. You don't need to apply to get it. You can get your FSA ID whenever you're ready. The next thing that you need to have is parent and student income information. So like I said, it's from 2017. We do want to know about both the parent and the student. So even if the student didn't file a tax return and just did babysitting or yard work, we want to know about that information. They don't have to have filed a tax return, but we want to know what that student and parent earned in 2017. And something the next bullet says we'd like you to have your W-2 forms available to look at, because we want to, most of the information is found on your tax return, but there's one piece of information that sometimes is often forgotten, and it's a great tip, is while the financial aid applications towards the calculations, it doesn't look at what you have put away in traditional retirement accounts. So we don't use your 401k or 403b, but we want to know that annual amount that you're contributing. That's found, it's on your W-2 in box 12A through D is an amount, and so that's your annual contribution to your retirement account. That is asked on both the FAFSA and CSS profile. So it's important that you look at your W-2 and see what annual amount you put away towards your retirement account that year. And then we want to know asset information. So for both the student and the parent, what do you have in cash, savings, and checking? What investments do you have? This is where if you own a business, that it comes into account. Other real estate properties, so you might get rental income. That's asked for on the financial aid applications. And then we want to know, well, who's in your household? Who's using your limited resources? So we've asked about your income and your assets, and now we want to know who's in your household and using these resources. So do you have younger siblings in the household? And the CSS profile might say, okay, there's a 13-year-old in that household. We're assuming that the parents are also saving for that child to go to college in the future. We want to know, are you supporting a grandparent in your household? So who's in your household and using your limited resources is asked on. The last bullet, and then not least important, is you want to make sure this is the time that I think all students memorize and learn and make sure they have correct their social security number, because on the aid applications, it does ask in the FAFSA, you must include your social security number for the student and if the parents have a social security number. It's very important. So filing the FAFSA, when you're entering your income information, there's a super cool new tool that was developed when it was decided that two government agencies, the IRS that collects the tax returns and the Department of Education, were allowed to speak to each other and share information. So when you're filing the FAFSA, you get asked if you'd like to import some data fields from your tax return directly from the IRS. So it's a great thing to use because we, as financial aid administrators, when we're reviewing your FAFSA, we know that that's correct information. You might be, and if you enter the information yourself, you might read the line as how much taxes did you pay, and you might misinterpret that and key something that is actually not correct. But we know if it's coming straight from the IRS, that's what we want to know. It's the correct information. To make sure that the information is extra secure, last year the IRS and the Department of Education instituted that if you say yes and you meet certain criteria and we can get your information directly from your tax return, when you see it on the student's FAFSA, it won't be numbers. It will be just random shapes and symbols because it's encrypted. It's not you. We don't want anybody who's misfiling your FAFSA and might not be you to see what you filed on your tax return. So aid administrators, we can see the numbers and the correct information, and rest assured it's working and it's correct. But when you see it on the FAFSA and the student sees it, it will just be like stars and explanation points and encrypted data. So it's very secure. We always suggest that you take advantage of the IRS data retrieval tool because it's simpler, it avoids mistakes, and then if you're selected for another verification process down the road, it simplifies the process. So social security number, as we said, it's super important at this time. I think also students should start memorizing their social security number, make sure they have the correct one. because at a school like Boston University and schools that have as many applications and students as we have, this is the way we link your admissions application with your financial aid applications. Social Security numbers, you can't have two students with the same. So believe it or not, people say, well, why can't you match on just a name and maybe a date of birth? Because we might have two, Rebecca Castleys with my date of birth, and we would never want to have different, admissions record with the wrong financial aid data. So to be super secure, we only match on Social Security numbers. So the problem comes about where it's required on the FAFSA, but the common application that you use to apply for admission, it's not required for a number of reasons. International students are using this application, so it does say this is not required. It does flag the student and say, are you sure you don't want to include it? It's super important for financial assistance, but we link on this way. So make sure if you'd like to receive and be reviewed for financial aid that you include your Social Security number on the common application. And then again, on the CSS profile, some schools use the CSS profile to give out financial assistance to international students. And for a number of reasons, they might not need a Social Security number. But at Boston University, in order to link them all, we do need it. So it's super important that the student includes their Social Security number. And in doing, if they don't include them, it really could cause delays in loading. And as David said, we wish we had enough financial aid dollars to award every student, but we don't, so that you don't want that to be the reason that we're not able to offer you the financial aid dollars that you need to attend. So here comes our deadline. So you're going to file the FAFSA, the CSS profile by our deadlines. And here's the great news. These are our deadlines, but the 2019-20 forms are already available. October 1st is when they came out. So they've been out for 16 days. And the great news is if you look down, you haven't missed any of the deadlines yet. So even though the financial aid applications are available, nobody has missed a deadline. So we all are on top of the game. So we'd like to make this easy, and as David's first slide highlighted is that financial aid and admissions go hand in hand, and one process shouldn't be thought of and then come up with financial aid after. We align all of our deadlines are the same as the admissions deadline. So for early decision, we need the FAFSA and CSS profile submitted by November 1st. For early decision 2, January 2nd, and again, if you're applying for regular decision, your common application and the FAFSA and CSS profile are due by January 2nd. So just remember, admissions and financial aid go hand in hand, including all of our deadlines. So what happens with the information? So you file the FAFSA, the CSS profile, and what happens with that information? How does the financial aid dollars get determined? There's a formula that we use, and this is why it's great that David has already highlighted, is right now is so exciting if you're entering college because you shouldn't be ruling out a school because of cost. Because the good news is the formulas, especially the federal, it's a pretty much the same at every school. There's a formula. And when you're done filing the FAFSA, you get what's called your expected family contribution, your EFC. So you enter the information on the FAFSA, and at the very end, it tells you your expected family contribution. So something else about the FAFSA is if you don't want to commit to filing the full FAFSA, there's something called the FAFSA forecaster. So if you just go online and type that in, it's just a little bit simpler form. You don't have to send it to any schools yet, and it will tell you a rough idea of what your expected family contribution might be, so that you can start getting an idea of what that is. And so your expected family contribution is what that, based on the information you've entered on the financial aid applications, what you can contribute to that student for 1 year of college. So the CSS profile has a bit of a different formula. So an example of one of the differences might be the FAFSA application just says how many students in that household, how many children in that household are going to be going to college next year. And you might say 2. So the FAFSA says, excellent, 2. And the CSS profile says, wait a second. Okay, 2 are going to college. What kind of college is that other sibling going to? Is it a community college? Is it a 4-year public? Or is it a 4-year private with maybe costs similar to Boston University with higher costs. And we can craft the expected family contribution to give a little bit different allowance for a family that's financing a 4-year private education for that other student in their household versus a lesser cost school. So that's just a little different. So you might have a different expected family contribution from your CSS profile that makes you eligible for Boston University gift aid than you do on your FAFSA. And your expected family contribution might be lower on the CSS profile because we're able to ask more detailed questions and just get some additional information that helps us assess your family's ability to finance BU. So the formula is the cost of education minus your expected family contribution creates your eligibility for financial assistance. So I'm going to use myself as an example. I filed the forms for my son. We got a $10,000 expected family contribution. So how much aid is my son eligible for? So $10,000 is going to stick to him no matter which school he applies to. So he's definitely going to apply to Boston University. And so we are looking at this year's expenses, so cost of attendance. So this chart includes what we call billed and non-billed, so direct and indirect costs. So what we're looking at is everything you should consider for 1 year of education here at BU. So this is things that you're billed for like tuition and room and your meal plan, but also things that you're not billed for, but you definitely should think about like transportation, personal expenses, your books and supplies. They all come together at each school, creates your cost of attendance. So here at BU, it's about $72,000. So I take $72,000 here at BU minus my $10,000, and so my son could be eligible for up to $62,000 in financial aid. So even if he applies to University of Massachusetts, and let's say their costs are $30,000, well, the $10,000 sticks with him, so $30,000 minus the $10,000, he would be eligible up to $20,000, which is why right now you shouldn't rule out a school because of cost, because you could actually be paying less to attend Boston University than a school that might not have as much of its own financial aid dollars to give out. So when we are looking to fill that eligibility, we definitely first want to fill it with things that are gift aid, so commonly referred to as scholarships. So there's merit-based and need-based scholarships. So this is gift aid. Money doesn't have to be repaid back. So the difference between merit scholarships and need-based scholarships is merit scholarships are decided most of the time by our friends in the admissions office, or it could be by our friends in the College for Fine Arts or the athletics office. So you typically don't need to do financial aid applications. It's just based upon your talents that you're getting a merit scholarship. But the biggest way that we use our money here at BU is our need-based scholarships. So they're also grants, gift aid, don't have to be repaid back, and they can go up to your eligibility. So I can get up to $62,000 in need-based scholarship. The next part of your financial aid also might include student loans. So those don't need a separate application. Just filing the FAFSA makes students eligible for several low interest, great borrower benefit student loans. The amounts are limited, set by the Department of Education, and they differ for freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year. Definitely limited, but we often include student loans in a financial aid package to help students finance their education. And then you also might see something called federal work study as part of your financial aid award, and that means a student can work on campus. The reason it's considered financial assistance is the federal government is kicking in a portion of that student's salary. So it's really great in encouraging students to work on campus. They'll actually get a paycheck just like a regular job, but it's partly subsidized by the Department of Education. So BU, obviously we want students to work on campus, but in the financial assistance office, if we have a student working for us that has work study, we pay a portion of their salary. So it's advantageous for departments to hire students that have work study. So that might be part of your financial aid award. So they all come together, and they can come from different sources. So the biggest source that you'll see on your financial aid award will be from Boston University. So we hope we can give you a portion of that $240 million of gift aid that we give out. So you'll see funds from Boston University, and then the loans and work study and some gift aid programs from both the state and the federal government might make up a portion of your financial aid award, and hoping to meet your eligibility. And then private scholarships are definitely something that we encourage students to apply for. Don't leave any stone unturned. Check in with your employers, go to the library, do research online, check in with your guidance counselor. There's definitely a lot of opportunities to students to apply for private scholarships to help meet their eligibility and can contribute to help financing a BU education. So those are the sources that can meet that student's financial aid eligibility.
Thank you, Rebecca. Okay. When I started, I mentioned tips. So tips and reminders, here are a few important things for you to remember, and some of them touch on kind of our philosophy and approach to helping students and parents working through this process. One thing to keep in mind is to do your planning carefully and to plan not just for the first year but for all 4 years. Be realistic in developing those plans. We have some tools and some information on our website about how you can approach that, particularly if this is your first time working through the college financing process. So we recommend those to you. Stay organized. Communicate. Much of the communication comes directly to the student, and so there's a significant onus on the student to kind of share that information, to keep everyone in the loop so the conversation is on track, and opportunities aren't missed, and deadlines aren't missed, and just other information is fully considered on your end. There are a lot of things to consider. The primary mode of communicating information to students and families is our website. There's a lot of information there, the planning page, as I mentioned, but a whole host of other resources, specifics around scholarships, grants, loans, the application process, and so forth. So recommend that to you highly. The other piece, the last on the list, is the My BU student portal. So we anticipate that you will, and we encourage you to get familiar with the portal and with the website, because that is where we will be pushing information out to you and be having an expectation that you'll be absorbing that information. So the portal, MyBU, has information about the status of your admissions application and your financial aid application. So it's a good idea to check it to know if we're waiting for you to take an action step, and to get in the habit of checking it with some frequency, because it is a living, breathing portal. So things change, things might be added since you checked last. So keep an eye on it. When admissions and financial aid decisions are released, they will be posted there. You'll get information on how to see your decision on the MyBU portal. So do that. Post-decision, there's information about housing assignments and about open house programs that happen mostly in April, where you have the opportunity to come on campus and be exposed to a host of programming, not the least of which is an opportunity to meet with one of the financial assistance representatives and help you with any questions you might have about where you stand aid-wise, and if there are other resources that you need beyond the aid package that you've been offered, how to approach getting those nailed down. There's also information in the portal about off-campus receptions if you're not able to get on campus for one of the open house events. So we recommend that highly. And we are at the question phase. So let's see where we're at for questions. And we can queue up a few. There you go.
All right. So we have a great first question. I think we'll get this a lot as we approach the November 1st early decision deadline. So the question is, I want to apply for early decision, but I'm worried about money. Should I do it? So great question. Definitely, it's a consideration. So at Boston University, you will receive your financial aid award at the time you receive your early decision and you'll have that information to make your enrollment decision. So we definitely think early decision is an excellent opportunity. There's a couple of tips we have, and one of them I think first is to go ahead and do that FAFSA forecaster. Just see what your expected family contribution might be, and if your family contribution is something that you think is totally unrealistic and that might not make it possible for you to attend a school unless you get merit aid, then Boston University, you might not want to apply early decision, definitely apply regular decision, but you might want to open yourself up to some schools that might make financing more attractive. One thing you lose with early decision is the ability to compare financial aid awards. So when we give the award, it might be the best award that you will receive, but you won't know that because at early decision, you lose just that ability. You can only apply to one school early decision, so you don't get the opportunity to compare. There is something that every college needs to have called the net price calculator. So if you go to our website and just search net price calculator, it will pull it up, and that will give you an idea of what kind of financial assistance you might qualify here at BU. Now remember, the net price calculator is only as good as the data you put in, and it's always based on our class that came in last year. So your actual award could be slightly different, but it's just a good indicator to start your process. So it's a great question and really up to the family to decide. But yes, definitely think about early decision here at BU.
Okay. We've got lots of them coming in. Do I have to file a FAFSA/profile for merit aid consideration? There's the simple answer, and then there's the more involved answer.
You'll give the more involved answer.
The simple answer is no. The more nuanced answer, I guess, is that it's not sequential. So if your preference would be merit aid, you don't want to sit back and hope that you'll get merit aid, and then if you don't get merit aid, then apply for need-based aid. Because at the point that you'll know that you're not getting merit aid, it will be too late to apply for need-based aid. So unless you're in a situation where you really don't need financial assistance to attend, but it would be nice to have a merit award, then you really need to do all of them at the same time. Hope for consideration for a merit award. In some cases, there are action steps you need to take for consideration for certain merit awards, but a profile in the FAFSA is not one of them. But if financial constraints are an issue in terms of your being able to attend BU, then you're going to want to apply for need-based aid. Applying for need-based aid doesn't preclude you from getting a merit award. So you're not disadvantaging yourself by applying for merit aid relative to a merit award, and applying for need-based aid relative to a merit award. You can still be considered, and some students get pieces of both. But unless you're in that situation, we encourage you to apply for the need-based aid piece.
So keeping along early decision and merit, so the question was, can I receive merit scholarships if I apply early decision? So yes, you are reviewed, and you can receive, at the time you receive your early decision, you can be notified of some merit aid, including the presidential scholarship, the $20,000 scholarship, but what you won't find out is any full tuition application. So like the trustee, our selective, highly selective full tuition scholarship, you won't find out until March with the rest of the decision population if you've won a full tuition award. So you can find out about a presidential award, but not you can't find out about full tuition awards. And then about early decision, can you be let out of the agreement if the financial aid doesn't make it possible for you to attend? So we ask that you write to us and let us know what's impacting your family's ability to finance and see if there's anything we can do to review to potentially increase your financial aid and just make sure we've given it an extra thorough review. But that's one of the reasons you can be let out is if you can't make it work financially. So it happens to very few students each year, but it is the reason you can be let out.
Do you give aid to international students? Need-based aid, unfortunately, we don't have sufficient need-based aid to offer awards to international students. There are some of our merit awards that are available to international students and others aren't. On the website, it specifies which ones fall into which category, but again, some do and some don't.
The next question is, if my federal expected family contribution, EFC, is really high, does that mean I won't get aid? So I guess what's the definition of really high? We have a high cost. So you saw it was about $72,000 for this year. So as long as your expected family contribution isn't over our costs, you're eligible for need-based aid. So we always advise families to submit the aid applications. And then if there's anything that you feel that's impacting your family's ability to pay, let us know. The CSS profile actually has a box for special circumstances to let us know what's going on, or you can craft an email or a letter to send to the aid offices at the schools you're applying to, and just let us know what's going on. So if your 2017 income was very high and a parent has lost a job or something has happened and then your 2018 income is different, we can review that letter and see if there's anything we could potentially do to use our judgment and impact your expected family contribution. So I definitely think you should still apply, and you will always be eligible for low interest student loans. So even if you file and you have absolutely no eligibility, there are low interest student loans that you can qualify for.
Okay. What if the non-custodial parent doesn't want to fill out the applications? Good question. First, I emphasize that every situation is different. And we're always interested in talking with you to better understand your situation and to give you our best advice. As I think Rebecca mentioned earlier, there is a waiver form and a waiver process for consideration of waivers from the requirement of the profile from the non-custodial family. The form itself has some information on the kinds of circumstances that are favorably considered and the kind that aren't. The way the question is phrased is if the non-custodial parent is unwilling. Willingness isn't something that we can respond favorably to. There may be other circumstances that we can, and we're certainly interested in having a deeper conversation about what your situation is with your family. But if you're falling into that group, we encourage you to at least look at the form, and if you're still a little unsure, have a conversation with a financial aid advisor to see what can be done.
So a question is, how are 529 college savings plans taken into consideration on the FAFSA and CSS profile? So the good news is they're not counted as a direct resource. So we don't say, oh, you have this amount of money, we're going to count that towards your eligibility. They are asked as if they're opened if the parent opened them on behalf of the student, they will be reported as a parent asset. So don't report it as a student asset, even though it's for that student. If the parents open the account on behalf of the student, that's how you report it, as a parent asset. If a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle opened up a 529 savings plans, it's not reported on the financial aid applications.
What if my parents will not help me pay for college? Good question. It kind of depends on the circumstance. If they're unwilling to pay and they're unwilling to complete financial aid applications, then you're kind of between a rock and a hard place. If they've expressed that they're unwilling to pay, if they would otherwise be expected to pay. In other words, if the financial aid application indicated an expected contribution that is large enough that it would prohibit you from coming even with an aid package, then that's problematic. The reason I'm drilling down here is because there may be a situation where a parent is unwilling to pay, but the expected contribution might be close to zero anyways. And if that's the case, then it may not be an issue as long as they complete the aid application forms and let us work through that process with you. All those things are hard to know on a webcast, but certainly contact us and have a deeper conversation about your particular situation, and we can advise you a little more clearly as to how to proceed, whether Boston University is a feasible option for you, or whether whether there are other options that are more feasible for you and your family at another institution.
So I might make up my own question that I thought of. So these financial aid applications sound like a lot of work. And they do. But there's some great news to share that at Boston University, you only have to fill out the CSS profile for your first year, your incoming year, and then the FAFSA only if you're interested in receiving federal or state aid each year. But the BU gift amount that you receive, it's part of what we call the BU Scholarship Assurance. So we guarantee that amount for your 4 years here. So your 4 years of undergraduate study. So the great news is you just file once, and we hope it's helpful for planning and so that you can have peace of mind that this is your aid package for your 4 years here. And so the real question is, if you don't think you'll qualify, should you still apply? And what if you want a parent loan, such as a Parent Plus loan from the Department of Education? So as I think we've already said before, I think everybody should apply. Even if right now you don't apply, something might come along and derail your financing plan. I think we've seen in recent, the last couple of years, is these awful hurricanes that have unexpectedly, our friends in Florida this year, that if somebody had filed, we would at least have their applications on file, and we could make adjustments and allowances for, anything that's come along and derailed your financing plan. So I always think families should apply. And then for the Parent Plus loan, we at least need your FAFSA application on file. So everybody should file the FAFSA to be eligible for a Parent Plus loan or the low interest student loans.
Will I get more if I apply before the deadline? Someone is really thinking of it.
They're applying right now.
In a word, no. But it's a good opportunity to talk a little bit about timing. We do have our deadlines, and as we mentioned, we don't have the luxury of being flexible with our deadlines. But it really can be to your advantage to apply now. Because the more time there is between when you filed and when the deadline actually falls, the more time you have to resolve any issues that may come up relative to your filing. Like Rebecca was mentioning, the importance of a Social Security number. If one is missing from one of the documents, the common application, the profile, or if there's a digit off, or if there's some other glitch, having a little time to work with us to resolve those issues can be the difference between whether you get an aid package and whether you don't, and whether you come to BU or whether you don't. And so the sooner you can file, really the better, and get that done so that you can either know all my ducks are lined up, or BU should have my records by now, but somehow they don't. Let me call and figure out what's going on so I can get those things resolved. And that becomes real challenging if you're doing that over the Christmas break, and our deadline is January 2nd. So a word to the wise, sooner is better.
Yeah. And like we said, both the forms are available October 1st. And so something also cool this year that we think is cool is that FAFSA is now available on your phone. So there's an app There's an app for that. It's called My Student Aid, and so it's a free application. You can get it on your phone, and you can actually apply for your FSA ID or submit the FAFSA on your phone. There's some other features on it as well that I think are very helpful. It's actually going to be expanded so that you'll be able to see how much student loans you have. There's something called the college scorecard where you can review different schools. So it's really cool. So My Student Aid is the application that was available starting October 1st. So you can even file your FAFSA on your phone.
Cool.
Yeah.
Will BU match offers from other schools? I can see why you think that. We don't. That said, if you get an aid offer that's substantially different and you think maybe there's something different or confusing or that didn't come across in information that another school got that we got, then be in conversation with us. It's not you're filing your forms on a computer that are going in a box, but there are real people behind the data. So if something looks amiss, then let us know. But we don't go, oh, school X gave you that, we'll give you that. We don't do that because we know that there are some variances that are going to happen and we expect them to happen.
So the question is, if my sibling is starting college at the same time as me, but I don't know where yet, what do I put on the profile? So great question. So you can just make an assumption and put four-year public if you feel, or you can let us, I would just put probably four-year public if that's part of their just one of the schools they're applying for. And then once you do know, you can update us and let us know. But I think the choice is probably four-year public is a safe bet to put on the aid applications if you don't know yet.
Cool.
Yeah.
How do I tell you about high medical bills or other special circumstances? Good question. Please let us know. I'm sorry if that's the experience going on in your family right now. There are medical expenses that are taken into account in the formulas to some degree, but if you're having unusually high medical expenses, and it's important to know those are expenses paid and not expenses simply incurred, but if they're high medical expenses paid in the past year, then let us know. I think as Rebecca mentioned on the profile, there's a space for you to add comments and information, but you can add them there. You can also simply write to us and ask that they be taken into account as the file reviewer look at those. The more explanation and specificity and documentation you can send, the better that is, the easier that is for us without necessarily having to go back to you for more information. But the extent to which they can be taken into consideration and will make a difference, those all depend on how much it is and what your eligibility circumstance is. But certainly we'll want to know as much as we can to take as much of your financial challenges into consideration as we can.
So I'm going to take a harder one and maybe ask for some help too. So the question is, my parents filed their tax returns jointly in 2017, which is the income asked this year on the 1928 applications, but they're not together now. Can we still use the IRS data retrieval tool? So you can use the data retrieval tool, but it will pull over the adjusted gross income and the taxes paid by both parents. It won't know to do any smart logic to separate them. So you can use it, but then you'll need to reach out to the aid offices and update them about the situation and who's in your current household. And then we can separate if that aid officer chooses to separate and remove and figure out which parent's information that we should include on the FAFSA application. And then for the CSS profile, which parent we might want to do the supplemental profile for that other household. So you can use it, but it won't be smart to know to separate out that parent. I'll start working with it.
Here, go for one.
There's good
Looking
questions.
for one that hasn't been answered.
So I'm a non-traditional student, age 30. Do I have to give parent information? So good question. So for the FAFSA, if you are age 24 or over, you don't provide parent information. So no on the FAFSA. But for the CSS profile for Boston University Limited financial aid dollars, we want some additional information. So what is going on in your household? So we won't just automatically waive the parent's information because it's a family choice that you're starting college later and are non-traditional age, but we want to know what's going on, and we can assess each case separately, and it's a case-by-case review. So don't automatically assume you don't need to report it on the CSS profile, but reach out to us and let us know about your circumstances.
Okay. Do both a parent and a student need a separate FSA ID? Yes. That's an emphatic yes. It's not a family FSA ID. It is an individual FSA ID, and it sticks with you for ever. So if you have an FSA ID as a student and you're an undergraduate, and then after your undergraduate 4 years, you do graduate school and apply for loans or federal aid for that, it's the same FSA ID. It will continue, and that goes for parents as well. The same FSA ID you use to sign your son or daughter's FAFSA, if you decide to go to graduate school or to undergraduate school, it's the same FSA ID. It's not specific to the profile, and it's not specific to the family. It's specific to you. It is literally your electronic signature. So just like your signature is just you, it's just you.
And I just want to say a couple more things about the FAFSA as I think about them, because I think, as David mentioned, our website is such a great resource, and I was reading it today. I smile at David because he does a lot of the word crafting, but there are great tips about filing both these aid applications, the FAFSA and CSS profile, and so common made mistakes and what you can do and specific questions that sometimes trip people up. So definitely look at our tips for filing is a great thing to do. And I completely forgot where my train of thought was about my other thing, but it really is good to look at the tips about filing the aid application. I like that part of it.
And there's an FAQ section, which sometimes you might want to thumb through to see if your question is there, or if a question you haven't thought of is there. That helps you understand it better. There's a question: do I have to include my retirement accounts in my assets when you're reporting them? Good question. And this, if you remember when Rebecca was talking about the W-2 form and pulling in the amount that you contributed to a retirement during the tax year or calendar year that's at issue with this year's filing, the 2017 year, you're reporting your retirement only to the extent of what you contributed to it in that year, because it's like income that you did something else with, you chose to put in your retirement account. The asset base that you have amassed thus far, which hopefully is a good chunk, is not asked for on either the profile or the FAFSA. So that piece you don't report, but the amount that you contributed just this past year, just in 2017, you do report.
Do you take household debt into consideration and parent-student loan debt? So that's another good question. So the aid applications ask for the value of your parent assets. So if like there's a stock you have or something, we want the value on that date you're filing the aid application. So the CSS profile asks about if you own a primary home. It asks about the value, so the value and then the debt to get the equity. But student loan debt is not asked, or as is consumer debt, so credit card debt is not asked for. But this is something that David and I talked about for special circumstances. So if you do have parent student loan debt that you're currently repaying, put that in special circumstances, and it might be something that we can consider and use our judgment to include, but it's not asked on the aid application as a question.
Okay. What is the Federal Plus loan? Federal Plus is one of two federal education loan programs. The Plus loan is the program that is set for parents to borrow for their students' undergraduate education, and the loan that the student takes for their education is their federal Stafford loan. They both work a little bit differently. Both you have to file the FAFSA to apply for, to be considered for. With the Stafford loan, part of it may be need-based, subsidized, part of it may be not need-based, unsubsidized, but in either case you have to file the FAFSA. For the PLUS loan, it is not tied to specific amounts in each year of the students in school like the Stafford loan is. The parent can borrow up to the total cost of education minus any financial aid the student's receiving. So it's within that range like other credit-based education borrowing, but it's the federal program. I think we're maybe
there's so many good questions.
A lot of good questions. Remember, we will be sending out shortly the email with the tape of this recording, and also
tape.
Yeah.
Recording.
And if you have questions,
the link.
Feel free to call. Old school.
Yeah, I think this is the time we're happy to answer questions. So call us or email us, and we're really happy to help.
It's question season.
It's question season.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.